Bill Thompson asks, how do you convince a lefty that giving assistance to those in need is godly on an individual level, noble on a local level, good at a state level, but detestable at the federal level? Well, I don't know if I'd break it down quite so into quite so many categories. I think if I was going to answer that question to the degree that I can answer it, I would say this. When you give something to somebody else voluntarily, that's charity. And the act of giving of your own resources to someone in need, despite what many objectivists would say, in my opinion, that's a virtue. And the reason it's a virtue is because it's voluntary. This leads to a bigger issue to which I'll get in a minute. If, on the other hand, you believe that the state should come and take money from people at gunpoint and then redistribute it to people in need, that's not virtue. That's coercion. That's not virtue at all. And that's the difference, Bill. The difference is giving assistance on a voluntary level, working in your church, working in a charity, voluntarily writing a check. Conservatives are far more generous in terms of charity than liberals are, because they don't have to. They pay their taxes, same as everybody else, more than everybody else generally. And then in addition to that, they're moved by certain causes or certain individuals or certain organizations like your church, or maybe they like Veterans Affairs, or maybe they see a guy on the street, whatever. And they give more than than is taken from them to help disadvantaged people. And that's actual charity. That's virtue. When you are in favor of turning up the screws on taking more and more and more of people's hard-earned money and taking it by force and then giving it to other people, that's not virtue. That's coercion. That's enforcing your will on other people. Which leads me to the bigger issue. I think the reason I wanted to get into this question just a little bit is, I think one of the problems we have as conservatives is a belief that we can enforce virtue from without. Liberals have this belief as well. It's just a different set of values, I suppose. When you talk about some of these issues, the gay marriage issue, the abortion issue, I'm not going to get into those. I'm not afraid of getting into them. I'm not going to get into them now because I don't have time. These are huge issues. But what you come down to is you want to have the government on the side of what you perceive to be right, and so do I actually. But I'll clarify this further by saying you should not, under any circumstances, lie down for having the government take money from you, and then use those things to do things that you perceive to be evil. I understand the idea of being complicit in evil in that sense. I get that too. But I do think on some level there's an awful lot on our team of this idea that when we see laws or reduction of things like the drug laws or this kind of thing, that it promotes a lack of virtue, and that it's our job to enforce virtue. And to the degree that happens, I disagree. I don't think you can enforce virtue. In fact, I think the definition of virtue is that it's unforced and uncoerced. If it becomes coerced, if it becomes law, it's not virtue anymore. It's the internal willingness of it. And that gets us back to this giant idea about kind of this Christianity and the fundamental core belief system of America. Despite what the left will tell you, and what I believe for most of the middle of my life, that the founders were a bunch of atheists and so on and so forth, they weren't. And one of the things you completely hear, even from the most deist or theist of them, guys like Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, the theme that runs through all of the founders all the time is that this form of government is appropriate for a virtuous, and they would often say a religious country. And the reason for all this is very simple, folks. We all believe in limited government. We all like the idea of limited government. But if the people are not virtuous, then not only do they not deserve limited government? They're not going to get it. If people are cheating and stealing and taking other people's stuff and hurting people, you need a government, a state, to enforce a large series of laws and regulations. But if they're internally mastered, if they're internally guided, and if they're internally regulated, then you don't need all of this stuff, because if virtue comes from within, you can let people be free, because most of the people, most of the time, won't do the wrong thing. They'll do the right thing. They'll be virtuous. So I think that's really what it comes down to. Bill, if you're trying to argue with lefties that having the state do all these things, it's not virtue. It's not goodness. It's not charity. It's not kindness. It's coercion. And you might as well take that money and use it to kill people, because it's not an act of moral superiority. And you got to knock these people off their perch. The people who say, well, we should raise taxes so that we can do good with it. You're not doing good by taking people's money at gunpoint. That's not good. Doing good, moral superiority comes from willingly doing something that involves some sacrifice. You don't get to point a gun at other people's head, take their money out of their wallet, give it to somebody else, and then claim that you're some paragon of virtue. You're not. You're a thief. You can't enforce virtue on people, and you can't legislate virtue on people. So that's where I would go with that one, Bill.